Hello there. Today we're going to take these ordinary Halloween decorations, we're going to paint them up and hopefully make them look a lot better than they do. We're going to start by sanding the surface so that it gives it a kind of a grain and a texture so that it'll take the paint a lot better. This one doesn't need it so much, it's got a fair bit of texture by itself. So we're going to start with this one. Use the lowest grit you can find. I'm using a 40, which is works really good. So we're just going to rub it along the edge. We're not trying to sand down the whole thing, we're just trying to give it a texture so that the paint is thick and that you'll hopefully see some of this texture when you're done. Alright, destroyed the paper pretty well. We want to get all of the dust off there because we're going to have to paint it. So do your best to get the dust off and look for spots that you might have missed. See a couple right here. Better. Alright, I'll clean up my mess and we'll be back. Alrighty, we're back. A little bit cleaner. So we're going to start this part of the project by using Modge Podge. And what that's going to do is it's going to make it so that the paint will adhere a lot better. I know it's usually used at the end and you can do that as well, but I like to use it just to give it a nice grip to adhere to the plastic. You can use plastic paint and spray it, but it's a lot more expensive, a lot messier, and this is pretty cheap. So we're just going to go real easy with a big brush, and we're going to start with the one that we just did, and we're just going to put on there liberally. Don't make big globs. The only thing you're really looking for is to avoid putting big globs on it. Alright, that should just about do it. So I tend to lean the prop against whatever's the least important and find whatever you can find to prop it up on that you don't give anything about. And this one seems to be doing alright as it is. Maybe come down every few minutes and move it so it doesn't stick against anything. I like to take some fans and prop them up to help with the drying time. Put one on either side, or just one, or none at all. Probably ones that are easier to prop than mine. Doesn't have to be on high, just some airflow across it. And while you're watching, just try to find any globs that are obvious. They have to be pretty big to be that much of a problem, but better to be safe than sorry. It'll also kind of speed up the dry time by doing this, but I wouldn't worry too much. They look pretty good. Make sure to use the matte variety unless you want them to be shiny, but since you're painting over them in this stage, it's not that important. So that's it for this stage. See you back in a jiffy. Alright, now that the Modge Podge is dried, it's time to paint the base coat of the project with the darkest color that you want in your project. I typically use black, but sometimes you use dark brown or whatever your darkest shade that you want is. It's the color that's going to show up in all the deepest, darkest cracks. Nothing fancy here, we're just gonna paint it. It's time to start dry brushing the project. We're going to start by putting the next darkest color on the hammer in this case, which is a medium brown. We start by just putting some paint on the brush and getting most of it off. We're going to go just wipe off most of it till there's hardly any left. And we're going to go against the grain on any spot that looks like it should be wood. We're going to go really light and slowly build it up until we start to see the brown appearing on the black. So I'm going to go back to the hammer again. Should be dry enough to maybe take another coat. If not, wait a little longer. I'm just going to do the same thing I was just doing. Probably enough brown. That's your judgment call. If you want a little more, you can. I'm going to go one more layer of another color. So I think we'll just switch to that. Now I've chosen to use Country Tan, which is kind of a beige. And we're going to go with a much smaller brush, and we're going to do a lot less paint on the brush. A lot less paint. And this is just, think of this as a highlight. You don't want, and I use a fine, soft brush on this stage. Softer the better. Or you can use a fan brush. Pretty pricey though. Take off an awful lot of paint so you can barely see it. And make sure that it's dry for this stage if you're not comfortable, because you can, you just want to go really lightly. And if you can even choose to do just the really raised areas, depends how much detail. I mean, this is a weapon. People aren't going to be looking at it that closely, but your call, how much of a stickler you are. You just want to do get the highlights. Alright, I think we're done this portion. I can hope you can see that. They're gnarly. At this stage I'm going to start painting the next lowest portion of this hammer. And I think I'm going to move the staff right out of the way. We're going to work on the lower parts, which is in this case the stonework. I'm just going to go for some gray. We're just going to do a very light highlight. See how that goes. Might make it thicker if I feel like it. We'll see. Now you could, if you like, you could go over, let that dry and do a little white really lightly over top to make it pop. But that's up to you. You don't have to. At this point, the main thing left to do is to choose a color for all the wrappings, whether or not you feel they're reinforced with stone, with like metal, or are they wrapped on there with fabric. It's probably leather. That's up to you to decide. Something's got to be holding it on there. So I'm going to do silver, I think. So this is the basic part of the project. I will have to do a few touch-ups. So here's the final product with the dry brushing and the texturing. It looks much nicer than it did before, and I hope you will join us again for our next tutorial. I felt that my staff had been completed. Yes, that'll do nicely. I break far too many of these.